Footing design. What is a footing? What are the steps you need to follow in designing a footing? What are the special things you need to attend when you design a footing? All those and much more will be discussed today. I'm Prasad from Structural Guide. Please subscribe our YouTube channel. You may get the notification on new videos. What is a footing? Footing is also called a kind of a foundation that supports small structures. Footing may be an isolated footing, or it may be a combined footing. It may be a strip footing. There are different kind of footings are there. So it's basically used to support the structures. Footing can be designed for the allowable bearing capacity. When footing is rested on the ground or whatever the soil or rock, we find the allowable bearing capacity. With that, we do the design. Based on the pressure applied from the footing, we design the footing. And also we consider the capacity of the soil, that's called the allowable bearing capacity when we designing a footing. The settlement of the footing is a concern to us, so therefore we calculate the settlement of the footing also based on the applied loads, and we'll see it is within the limit when you do the settlement checks. Footing design calculations. What is the procedure and what are the checks we have to be done? First, based on the allowable bearing capacity, we have to select or we have to evaluate the area of the footing. Once we find the area, then we can select the evaluate the dimension of the footing. So if you know the area, we can easily calculate the dimensions. Once you calculate the dimensions and once we finalize based on the load, we can consider a certain weight thickness for the footing. With that, we can calculate the ultimate bearing pressure or the ultimate pressure under the footing. Now, if we know the ultimate pressure, then we can calculate the bending moment in the footing. So now when we consider the bending moment at the edge of the support or at the edge of the column face, we calculate the bending moment as per the applied load, that is ultimate pressure. Then we calculate the reinforcement based on this bending moment from your relevant standard. So if you know the bending moment, you can use your standard to calculate the reinforcement area. Once you calculate the bending reinforcement, you can check it for the punching. So you can check the punching shear, reinforced punching shear requirement, and you can check whether there is a requirement of shear links in the footing. Normally, as a practice, we don't provide the shear links in the footings. Instead, we increase the thickness of the footing. But in thick foundations like rough foundations, we may use the shear links as a measure to now if the thickness increase, sometimes we may have to increase the wall thickness, or else we may have to have a column head like thing at the footing rough foundation. That also may be difficult to construct, so it may be sometimes easy to provide the shear links. But in a single footing, so isolated footing, usually we don't provide links. Instead, what we do is increase the thickness. Once you check for the punching, when you have to check for the vertical line shear, that is shear stress at the face of the column, that should not exceed the maximum allowable shear stress for that particular concrete. What are the special notes on designing of the footing? How to calculate bending moment of the footing? Now you can see here the allowable bearing capacity is there in your calculation. So if you know the allowable bearing capacity, you can calculate the ultimate pressure. Now you know the ultimate load here. Now we have calculated the dimensions. With that, we can calculate the ultimate pressure applied by the footing. Now if we know the ultimate pressure in the footing, so we have to calculate the bending moment. Now where we have to how we can calculate the bending moment? We calculate bending moment along this edge, face of this edge. Now you know this distance here to there, So you know this distance. If you know the distance, you know this pressure here, you know the pressure. Now you can calculate the bending moment. We have the 4. You can consider 1 meter strip. Then with that you can calculate the bending moment at the face of the column. So if you know the bending moment, you can calculate the reinforcement based on your standard. Then punching shear perimeter. How to calculate the punching shear in the footings? Now it's depend on the standard we use. Depending on the your standard, we have to consider the punching shear perimeter because it's vary based on the standard to standard. Now according to the ACI and BS and the EC2, we have shown the punching shear perimeters that they consider. So you have to consider all those in punching shear calculation. But what you should do is you should do the calculation according to the your standard. How to calculate the rebar development length? Now sometimes we have seen people putting the reinforcement only straight bar here. They don't bend the reinforcement upward here. They don't bend. Now is it correct? Is it correct to put the straight bar here? Yes, it's depend. Now we have to provide the anchorage length here. There are equations or even here you to check whether you need to calculate the additional, you need to have additional length here. Whether you need to bend this reinforcement or not, you can calculate based on the design requirement. The only requirement is the development length is based on the anchorage length. You should have provided the tension anchorage length for this reinforcement. If you have a such requirement, if you have not meet that requirement, you have to bend the reinforcement. I suggest you to refer your relevant standard. With that, you may get a good idea about this development length, whether to bend the reinforcement or not. But you have to keep in mind you can't always keep the bar straight always. This will be not correct always. It's depend. Now if we have high stress, you may need to bend the reinforcement upward. Anyway, it is always advisable, if you have bend it, if you haven't checked it, you have to better your bend the reinforcement in the upward direction, then there is no issue. With that, we end the today discussion. Today we discuss about footing design. What are the things you need to consider in footing designs and the methods we consider in designing the footings. Thank you very much. We meet again from a video.